Now, I don't normally film my wire wheel work because it's, quite frankly, not very interesting. But I thought, well, we'll do a little bit on the base of the Mamod 101, just to show you sort of how effective it is. And as I've said before, this doesn't look like it, but this is actually a brass wire wheel. It looks steel in the video, but it's not. It's actually brass. That just shows you how effective it actually is at removing the rust and the paint. And it won't take long at all to do this base, because obviously it's not very big. The nooks and crannies I can't get to with this wire wheel. I'll just go in with small one on a die grinder Dremel type tool. But it does work. It's very, very effective. Well, the various wire wheels have done their job, and pretty much all the rust and everything has been removed from the base. It's quite pitted, unfortunately. There's not really an awful lot you can do about that. The firebox has cleaned up nicely. Rust and paint gone from there. So yeah, basically all we've got to do now, wipe them down with acetone and repaint them. XHT high temperature engine paint on the firebox. Etch prime initially on the base. The boiler strap is in a pretty bad state where it's got hot here. It's really soft, and I think I may, if I've got some appropriate thickness copper sheet, I think I may well remake the boiler strap. But yeah, it's coming along nicely. The little Mamod is about ready to go back together. Everything's been painted. The only thing I did do was I did make a new boiler band. It's still got its protective layer on, because the old one, which is over here, really is in a bad way, and it's all parts of it are so weak that you feel that if you bend it, it's going to snap. So and it's corroded in quite a lot of places. So yeah, so I made a new boiler band. I made a pulley for it, little driving pulley, because obviously that was completely missing. Fortunately, obviously I've got other Mamods with those driving pulleys on, so I had an original to copy. So all ready to go back together, and we'll do that now. Back together, reassembled. Now I borrowed a burner from my early 1940s Mamod Minor 1 just to make it look a little bit more like what it would have looked like when it was new. So yeah, it's turned out okay. The base needed to be straightened, and I didn't show that because straightening up Mamod bases, particularly the raised ones, is a more art than science, and it involves bending and a vise with soft jaws and the rest of it, and it's just something that you have to practice at. I can't really show you how to do it. You've got to do it yourself, and you'll mess it up to start with, but eventually you'll work out exactly how to tweak it to get it back flat. So I managed that before I painted it. It's all done. The steam pipe has been reattached to the engine frame, and it's looking quite nice, particularly with the new boiler band and its new little drive pulley. Now, I have already attempted to run this on air. I generally do this with Mamods because they can be a bit of a pain, and it's not their fault, it's what happens to them over their lifetime. And we'll let it come round, and I'll zoom in on the engine frame and explain what I'm talking about. When I first tried to run this on air, it wouldn't run. I wasn't entirely surprised. I've had this before with Mamods, and what generally happens is that this is very thin, the engine plate that the cylinder actually oscillates against. And what can happen is, if the engine is mistreated, this plate can get bent. Now it only takes a fraction of a bend, and it won't get a decent seal between the cylinder and the engine plate, and the thing won't run. It's as simple as that. And sometimes you can't even see it, it's that small. So you have to very, very carefully, as best you can, bend this back to get it as flat as possible. I use two processes. I do that first, and then I use a stone, and I stone the surface. This is the other side. I stone this side of the engine plate, and I also stone the flat on the cylinder. And this will show you any high points, and it will also allow you to take any high points down. And once you've done those two things, the bending and the stoning on the plate, normally you'll get it to run fine. And as soon as I did that, I tried. I had 2 attempts, bend it first, then I stoned it, and now it will run down to about 8 psi on air, which is absolutely fine for one of these. That's not a problem. So yeah, it's all done. So now what we've got to do is see if it will run under steam. I'm sure it will. I'll use a little tiny Bix burner on it. I'm not going to use a meth burner. I tend to use Bix burners these days purely because they're safer, more convenient, and they don't discolour the base of the boiler, which is nice. So let's get some water in it and some heat on and see whether it'll run under steam. Just before we get it going, I thought I'd say a little bit about lubricants. I don't normally mention this, but I thought I would do because, you know, maybe people are going to ask questions about what I use. Now, lubricants is quite a touchy subject, and I'm not saying that this is the only lubricants you should use or anything like that. This is what works for me. I've been using it for years, and it works absolutely fine. For all the non-steam related parts, so that's anything that is rotating and moving which doesn't come into contact with steam, I simply use 3-in-1. And tiny little drop of that on the crankshaft here and the crank pivot pin. It works fine for me. I've never had any trouble with it, and it does the job. For the steam parts, you've got to use steam oil. So inside the cylinder, on the piston, and on the port face, you've got to use steam oil. Now I happen to have quite a lot of this. This is Accurcraft AP2803 steam oil. That's because I used to do an awful lot with steam locomotives, live steam locomotives. So I've got quite a lot of this, and I quite like this. This is quite a thick, sticky oil. Then most steam oil is thick and sticky, but this stuff, few drops of that seems to work really, really well. So that's what I use for lubrication, just as a guideline if anyone's interested. Okay, water in the boiler, heat on. Other little tip that is quite useful when filling the boilers on Mamods that don't have level plugs. I recommend the use of a lolly stick, or as our American friends call these things, coffee stirrers, and you just wedge that in between the engine plate and the cylinder, and that allows as you put the water into the boiler, it allows the air to come out the steam pipe, and that generally tends to work quite well. Well, the first steam test had to be aborted because I hadn't noticed that there is a seal underneath the top part of the safety valve here, and that had completely turned to goo. I didn't realise it, and so basically once we got some steam pressure, the steam was just leaking out of the top of the safety valve here. So that's now fixed, hopefully, and we'll let it build up some pressure again, and we'll try again. I think we're about there. Yes, look at that. No problem at all. Purring. Lovely. And again, I've got the gas turned right down, about as low as I can get it. I don't think this thing had had a lot of use. There didn't seem to be much wear. You know, normally you get wear, particularly in the frame where the crankshaft runs through. You know, it's a bit of tin plate with a steel rod going through it, so it does tend to wear. No bearings or anything, but no, nothing wrong with that. Very happy. So there you go. 1949 Mamod Minor 1 raised base disc crank flywheel. Made shortly after they transferred from St Mary's Road to Camden Street in 1949. What a lovely runner. It's very definitely worth taking the time to fettle these little engines, because if you do spend the time on them, they literally run superbly. They really do. Left. I've turned the gas off now, so it'll run down. But no, I'm well pleased with that. Well pleased with that. Lovely, lovely little engine. So I think that about wraps it up for the little Mamod Minor 1. Only one more to find now and we'll have the entire collection. Okay, as always, I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and thank you very much for watching. Cheers!